to Gaston Spotlight. I'm your host, Grayson Taylor, and I'm joined today by Cody Spiker. How are you, Cody?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. I understand that you served in the Army. I want to thank you for your service. What rank were you in the military?
I appreciate the support. I exited the military as a captain at 03. Started out as a E2 private and then went through ROTC at Appalachian State and commissioned as a second lieutenant and then worked my way up through up to captain.
Wow. So, and what exactly did you do in the Army? Like, what were your exact, like, day in, day out sort of tasks?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. As an officer, you hold many hats, and you change jobs pretty frequently because they're trying to develop and groom you for command positions, right?
Right.
So I started out as an officer. So I went to flight school right out of college and became a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. As an officer, the branch itself has, the aviation branch has warrant officers that fly and officers that fly. The officers do the leading and the admin more so, but we still have to fly and maintain currency and proficiency, right? Maintain lethality. When I first got to my initial unit, I was placed in the operations cell, so I was an assistant operations officer. About 9 months after that, I moved into as a platoon leader. So I was responsible for about 20 soldiers and five Black Hawk helicopters for the tactical implementation of the aircraft in combat. So we went to Afghanistan for 9 months, and I was fortunate enough to be able to lead men in combat, which was a very rewarding experience. Thankfully, we didn't have any significant acts against us, so we all came home, which is awesome, right? That was it was the winter of 17-18. After that, I went back to the operations cell, so I was an assistant operations officer. So I was writing orders, cutting orders, taskers, and then overseeing the current operations of the battalion was my main role in that position.
Okay.
After a few courses, I was a battalion supply and logistics officer, and that was in Korea. So I was responsible for the budget for the battalion around a don't quote me, but about the $2 million budget.
Okay.
Which was interesting to get to learn how to manage that and manage the supply chain within the battalion. Then I was a company commander for air traffic control services, the company, and we were the only air traffic control services company for the Army in Korea. So that was a very rewarding experience. And I was able to lead around 56 at any given time soldiers, which was very rewarding. So as I began, I was a Black Hawk pilot, and that was really my secondary role. My first role was to lead, but throughout all this time, I was able to fly and gain experience in flying. I flew for the medevac in Korea, got to pull real-world medevac missions, likely saving lives. You don't know, but it's a very rewarding experience. So that's pretty a rundown of what I did in the Army.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like it must have been an incredible experience. You said you went to Afghanistan and Korea. What was, out of all the places that you've been, traveled all over the world, what was your favorite?
I would have to say, if it were not for COVID-19, it would have been Korea. Unfortunately, I was there during peak COVID, and there were, just like here, lockdowns, heavy lockdowns throughout the whole time there. And that really limited my exposure to the culture and the people in places that I could go see. So if it weren't for that, it would probably be Korea. Outside of that, though, we did port operations in Greece when we went to Europe.
Wow.
So I got to spend 3 weeks in Greece waiting on the ship to deliver our aircraft. And so we stayed in hotels and Airbnbs and waiting on the ship and just getting to, see the countryside. Got to go to several World Heritage sites like the hanging monasteries of Meteora. They've got to see Thermopylae, where King Leonidas and his 300 stood against the Persians. They got to stand on the ground where they fought, which was very, very exciting for me. the Acropolis, all just the history of the place, and then the Mediterranean's beautiful.
Right.
The food is amazing, and the time of year we were there around this time, so it's just the temperature was perfect. I mean, it was just a wonderful time to be there.
And that sounds incredible to get to just like go all over the world and experience so many different cultures. And what's it like to actually be a pilot in the Army?
Yeah. So as I said, you wear many hats, and even our warrant officers wear many hats as well.
Mm-hmm.
There is no exception for safety, right? So before you ever step foot in the aircraft, you are spending hours of planning and hours of risk mitigation. So you identify your risks, you mitigate your risks, and then you have to brief your commander on your risks, and then they get to sign off on it, right? So before you ever step foot in the aircraft, if you're doing a 2-hour flight, you've probably done 4 hours of work before you even get out to pre-flight the aircraft.
Yeah.
As far as actually flying, though, there's nothing like it. Flying a helicopter is an insanely rewarding experience. Learning to fly is difficult. The first 10 hours when you're in a helicopter, it's kind of like you're in a bucking bronco. You can't control it, and then your brain's you're basically like learning how to walk again. So it's building new neural pathways, and just one day you go from spinning 360 degrees, bucking up and down, to you learned how to hover and you're stable. We call it the hover button.
Okay.
So it's just one day it just happens like that. No, it was an extremely rewarding experience.
That seriously sounds like it must have been an incredibly rewarding experience, because that's something that not everybody gets to do. Yeah. It's incredibly unique. But now that you're out of the Army, what are your plans? What do you want to do?
Yeah, so I separated from the Army I went on terminal leave last September. Separated officially in November. Went to the RTAG convention in Fort Worth, Texas last year. Consequently, it's happening again this weekend here in Fort Worth. Okay. But I applied to and got hired by Frontier Airlines to be an airline transport pilot, which is different than your typical airline transport pilot. Not many helicopter pilots in the past have made the transition over to airline transports, but the RTAG convention is Rotary to Airlines group. They are a group that helps rotary wing pilots transition to that, and we are a huge group moving into the sphere, the airline transport sphere. So I just finished up really a 6-month training of fixed wing training, that all the way from a private pilot's to the airline transport pilot certification and Airbus A320 type rating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, through being in the Army and even just being a pilot in general, all the different places you've gone, all the different experiences you've had, what's some advice that you can give for students that are here now?
The biggest rule that I think that you can follow and that was going to keep you safe is, if you're familiar with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I am, yes.
Yeah. So don't panic.
Okay.
Don't panic. And our
like
special operations brethren they have rules. Rule number 1 is be cool, and it's the same thing. If you're not panicking, you're cool, right?
Yeah.
So anytime you experience a problem, so in the aircraft, my first emergency procedure that I ever had to perform was in Afghanistan. We were about 5 miles outside of HKIA, the airport that we made the pull out from. 5 miles outside of that airport, we were doing a VIP transfer to the green zone inside Kabul, and we had a engine chip light. So on a jet engine, there's not a lot of metal-on-metal contact, but we have chip lights in the oil who will, when they pick up the metal fragments, they'll let you know that your engine's basically eating itself. Not a good thing. You're losing your engine. Yeah. So we got a chip light, and I'm a young pilot at this point, going really from rote memorization, and I haven't really hit the correlation phase of learning yet.
Okay.
So I start to freak out. I'm like, what do I need to do? Looking for my checklist. My pilot in command that I was flying with, he was our battalion production control officer. He was a maintenance test pilot. He said, "Hey man, it's okay, calm down. I'm at a good airspeed for single engine. Just go ahead and take that power level and pull it back." And so I did that. We flew. I got my checklist up and I backed myself up. Sure enough, he was right. The difference in what I learned there was he didn't panic.
Right.
One, because he knew his stuff, and that's key in not panicking. Is you have to know your profession and be prepared. But two, if you just take a breath, it gives you the standoff to be able to take in the whole picture and not become laser focused. So take a breath, don't panic, and work the problem set. We can only generally work one problem set at a time. Work the problem set.
All right. That's great advice. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for being here on Gaston Spotlight. I'm Grayson Taylor, and we'll see you next time.